The stars above the dying moon looked cold and distant. Commander Veltar stood at the edge of the bridge, his 3 eyes fixed on the flickering screens in front of him. His crew shuffled nervously, their pale skin showing signs of infection. Their breath shaky. Something terrible had spread through their ship, a virus unknown to their kind. It moved fast, too fast. The ship's medic had already collapsed 2 cycles ago. Veltar had never seen fear like this in his crew, not even during the war on Cridon Prime. Now, he had only one option left: send an emergency signal. His trembling fingers tapped the command console. He set the beacon to alert the nearest Alliance medical outpost. The ship's systems buzzed, trying to send the signal through dense nebula interference. Veltar waited, watching the blinking red light that marked distress, and then he stepped back, coughing into his sleeve, not knowing that the signal had misrouted, not knowing it was now heading far beyond the Alliance border. Straight to the most feared place in the known galaxy, Earth, the home of the Deathworlders, deep in space, hundreds of light years away. The human relay satellite blinked. A distress signal had been received, tagged as urgent, high level, and possibly war-related. Protocol kicked in. Automated systems forwarded the call to a fleet stationed near the border of the Sol system. Within minutes, a reply was sent, not to confirm, but to mobilize. Humanity did not ignore distress signals, especially not the kind that came coded. With Class 7 planetary threat markers on Veltar's ship, the crew grew weaker, one by one. They began collapsing in the halls, the virus attacking both body and mind. Veltar ordered the ship to go into passive lockdown, all remaining power to life support. He stood over the flickering command screen, waiting for a reply, but there was none. He feared they were already forgotten. 2 days later, a junior sensor officer screamed. A new ship had entered their system, massive, dark and silent. It moved without warning, without transmission. The alien crew rushed to the viewing window. What they saw made their hearts stop. The ship was not from the Alliance. It was too large, too terrifying. Its black armor was cracked with scars, glowing with strange energy lines, and at its side, painted in dull gray, were words they could barely read: SV-001, Human Death-class ship, Designation 1. Veltar couldn't believe his eyes. "No, not them," he whispered. "We didn't call them." Panic filled the bridge. "We're not at war," someone cried. But the ship didn't fire. Instead, it deployed small pods, dozens of them, dropping through the moon's thin atmosphere and landing near their ship's hull. They weren't armed, they weren't hostile. They carried food, medicine, water, and mobile field units. But no message, no words, no face, just actions. The crew hesitated to open the docking bay, unsure of what would happen next. Veltar made the call. He ordered it open. As the bay doors creaked, 3 humans walked in, fully armored, but not aiming weapons. At the center stood a tall man with short dark hair and cold blue eyes. He carried a scanner in one hand, a medical injector in the other. Without waiting, he approached the nearest sick alien and injected the cure. The crew stepped back, watching in disbelief as the infected alien sat up within seconds. Cured, blinking, breathing, Veltar stepped forward slowly. "Why are you here?" he asked, voice trembling. The human turned his head slightly, then said in a calm, flat voice, "We received your distress signal, but we didn't send it to you." Veltar replied. The man's eyes narrowed. "We know." Veltar felt a chill. The human's tone wasn't angry, it was disappointed. The kind of tone a hunter might use when someone lured him with false prey. All around them, the human crew worked fast. They deployed scanners, secured the sick, mapped the ship's weaknesses. Veltar realized they weren't just helping. They were preparing for something else. Something worse. Then, without warning, the human ship began firing small drones into the sky, spreading out into orbit. "Are we under attack?" someone asked. "No," the human commander said. "But something is coming, and it's not friendly." Veltar stared at the human, confused. "We asked for medicine, not war." The human gave a strange smile, not cruel, not kind, just tired. Then you should have checked where you sent your signal. Veltar's blood froze. They hadn't just summoned help. They had summoned wrath. And now the most dangerous species in the galaxy had arrived, ready to protect or destroy. Depending on what came next, the stars seemed to tremble as the human warship entered the system. Its size was unimaginable, like a floating city carved from black stone and wrapped in thunder. No lights blinked on its hull. No music played through its signal. There were no banners of peace, no signs of diplomacy. Only cold, crushing silence. Commander Veltar stood frozen on the bridge of his dying vessel. His crew stared at the terrifying shape in the void. Unable to speak, the ship didn't glide. It moved like a predator claiming territory. Even space itself looked like it bent. Around its massive frame, a signal finally came through, but it was not a message, it was a code. Just 4 letters and numbers, HDSV001. A designation used only in old war files. Buried and forgotten. A name whispered in fear during military training. The first human death-class ship. The Leviathan. Veltar felt his legs weaken. This ship didn't come to talk. It came because it thought someone was in danger. Or worse, because it thought someone needed punishment. In orbit, the Leviathan began to unfold. Massive cargo bays opened like ancient doors, revealing strange structures hidden inside. Thousands of drones buzzed to life and scattered through the system like sparks from a fire, scanning, mapping, analyzing everything. Some flew toward the moon. Others scanned Veltar's broken ship. Not a single human spoke. Not a single weapon pointed, yet the threat was felt in every heartbeat. A small fleet of dropships emerged from the Leviathan side. They were smooth, silent, and shaped like predatory birds. One by one, they landed near the alien vessel. Veltar's crew prepared for combat, unsure of what to expect, but no weapons came. Instead, the humans brought strange medical tanks, protein packs, atmospheric filters, and one of them carried a glowing cube the size of a head pulsing with green light. It was a viral cleanser, rare, advanced, and illegal in most regions due to its power. They hadn't just come to help. They came prepared to fix everything and fast. Then, through the smoke of the landing bay, he stepped out. The commander of the Leviathan, tall, silent, armored in matte black plates. His name tag read only one thing: Wren, Commander Wren of Earth's Deep Space Fleet. His face was hard, unreadable, marked by tiny scars that told stories older than Veltar's entire career. He didn't greet, didn't salute. He walked like a man on a mission, and the mission wasn't peace, it was order. Status, Wren asked his team, his voice cutting through the air like ice. 75% infected, one soldier replied, scanning the aliens with a shoulder-mounted device. Wren nodded once, then turned to Veltar. You sent a Class 7 distress signal, he said. Veltar opened his mouth to explain, but no words came. He hadn't meant to contact humans. Especially not these humans. But the signal had gone out, and the Leviathan had answered. We're not under attack, Veltar finally whispered. Wren tilted his head, slowly. Yet, he replied. All over the station, human tech activated. Their drones created a protective grid, formed temporary structures, built mobile hospitals in minutes. Veltar watched in stunned silence as a human doctor cured 6 of his crew within 5 minutes. The virus was dissolving, being deleted at the molecular level. The humans didn't just fight, they redefined survival. And then came the second shock. The Leviathan had launched defense satellites around the moon. Veltar hadn't ordered them, hadn't paid for them, yet now they orbited, armed and ready. Human tech, built for war, was now guarding the weakest colony in the sector. Why, Veltar wondered, why protect us like this? Wren finally answered that question as he stood beside the main viewport. There are predators nearby, he said, his voice calm but sharp. We intercepted their signals. They were coming to loot your ship, feed on your helpless state. Veltar swallowed hard. You're here because you expected battle. Wren gave a small nod. When we respond, "We don't come to talk," he said. "We come to end problems." As Ren turned to leave the room, one of his soldiers brought a tactical report. 3 enemy ships were already approaching, cloaked, waiting to strike. Veltar's crew had no idea. But the Leviathan did. It had already locked targets, already calculated trajectories, already prepared to burn the sky. Veltar stared at the dark ship in the sky and whispered to himself, "What have we summoned?" The answer was written in fire across the stars. They hadn't just called for help. They had called for the Leviathan, and now the galaxy would learn what it meant to wake the sleeping giants of Earth. The air inside the alien command deck was tense and quiet. Every eye followed the tall human who walked through their ship like he owned every corner of it. His name was Commander Aiden Wren. He didn't wear medals, didn't smile, didn't even remove his helmet right away. He moved with calm power, the kind that made even trained soldiers step aside without knowing why. Veltar had seen many warriors in his time, but this one felt different, not because of his weapons, but because of his silence. He didn't raise his voice, didn't make threats, yet his presence filled the entire room like smoke before a fire. Ren stopped in front of the main control console. He looked around at the sick crew, at the half-dead systems, at the commander's shaking hands. He removed his helmet slowly, revealing sharp features, a jaw lined with faint scars, and eyes that didn't blink much. One of his men passed him a small glowing device. He placed it on the table, tapped once, and a 3D scan of the entire ship appeared in the air. Every infected crew member was marked in red, every system failure in orange, and 3 enemy signatures in cold blue. Veltar leaned forward, eyes wide. "You knew we were being hunted." Ren nodded once. "We didn't come for rescue," he said quietly. "We came for intervention." "No." One spoke for a moment. Veltar could hear his own pulse in his ears. "What do you mean?" he asked slowly. Ren turned to face him, voice steady like steel. "Your signal was marked as Class 7 emergency," he said. "We don't ignore those. Not after what happened on Tarsi's 12. But we didn't send it to Earth," Veltar said. Quickly, Ren raised one brow. "You did now." The words hung in the air like a blade over their heads. Ren wasn't angry, but he wasn't pleased either. The humans had come because they thought someone needed saving or destroying. And they came ready for both. Suddenly, one of Ren's lieutenants entered the room. "Sir, enemy ships confirmed. Distance closing. ETA 12 minutes. Ren didn't blink, didn't panic. "Raise defensive shields," he said. "Deploy drone screen. I want automated flak in every vector, and prepare retaliation orders." The lieutenant saluted and disappeared. Veltar watched all of this happen without a single shout or argument. It was like watching a storm form above calm waters. The humans didn't ask permission. They didn't wait for votes. They just acted fast, clean, and without fear. Ren turned back to Veltar. "You had no idea they were coming, did you?" Veltar shook his head. "We were just trying to survive the virus." Ren stepped closer, his voice lowering. "That's the problem," he said. "Your enemies don't care what you were trying to do. They saw weakness, and they came." For a moment, Veltar felt like a child. He had led troops into war, commanded fleets, survived battles in nebulous storms. But now, in front of this quiet human, he felt completely unprepared. Ren's expression softened just a little. "That's why we're here," he added. "To show them you're not alone." Then he walked toward the window, staring out at the cold stars. His voice dropped into something colder than before. "But understand this," he said. "We don't fight for allies, we fight to prevent patterns. We've seen what happens when you let small attacks grow into large wars. We end things before they become history lessons." Veltar tried to understand. "You're not here as our friends." Ren looked back at him slowly. "We're here as a warning. To them and to you." In the background, human drones were activating on the surface of the moon. Tiny machines with deadly precision flew in spirals around the ship, forming a net of protection. Medical bots cured the dying. Engineers stabilized reactors. It looked like aid, but it felt like a takeover, and yet no one resisted, because deep inside, they all understood without the humans, they would already be dead. Ren walked past Veltar and paused at the exit. "There are rules out here," he said quietly. "But humans don't follow galactic rules. We write our own, especially when someone bleeds after asking for help." And with that, he left, leaving Veltar speechless. His crew stunned. Outside, in the blackness of space, the Leviathan turned, aiming its cannons at the incoming enemy fleet. The message was clear, even if the aliens didn't understand it yet. You don't answer a call from Earth unless you're ready for what comes next, because humans don't bring peace. They bring balance, and sometimes that balance is made of fire. Asterisk, the infected were healing faster than any alien medicine had ever managed. The virus that once melted lungs and scrambled neural pathways was gone in minutes. Human med units hovered silently through the ship, scanning, injecting, cleansing. Crew members who were half dead now stood, blinking, breathing, alive again. It felt like a miracle, but it wasn't magic. It was human efficiency, cold and calculated. Veltar stood near the med bay doors, watching the once doomed crew eat warm food and drink purified water. He should have felt grateful, relieved, even hopeful. But instead, a new feeling crept into his chest and knees, because the humans weren't just healing bodies. They were mapping the ship, scanning structural weaknesses, checking power nodes, evaluating weapon systems, and they did it without asking permission. Commander Ren moved like a shadow across the ship's control center, his portable display hovering near his side, constantly updating data from his team. One of his officers approached, whispering something into his ear. Ren nodded slowly, then turned to Veltar. "We found hidden code in your communication array," he said. "Someone piggybacked on your distress signal." Veltar's heart skipped. "What does that mean?" Ren's voice remained flat. "It means your call for help wasn't the only thing that was sent. Your enemies used your signal as a beacon to find you faster." In that moment, Veltar realized the sickness hadn't been the worst part. It had just been the trap. The real attack was still coming. Outside the window, the black void shifted. Ren tapped a command into his device and brought up a hologram showing 3 enemy ships in stealth formation. They were minutes away, nearly invisible, cloaked behind radiation fields, but the Leviathan had seen them long before they reached the moon's edge. Humans didn't wait for danger to knock. They watched through the door before it even arrived. Veltar took a step back. "You've already set up defenses." "Yes," Ren replied. "And we've already uploaded a firewall to block further tracking. We're not just healing you, we're sealing the leak, closing the wound before the infection spreads again." But it wasn't just tactical. The crew noticed more small details that sent chills down their spines. Human drones didn't just clean, they recorded. They didn't just inject medicine, they logged genetic structure, chemical balances, even emotional responses. They were studying, learning, adapting. Every second they spent on the ship made the humans more prepared for something else, something bigger. A young alien officer whispered to Veltar. "They're not just saving us," she said. "They're preparing for war." Veltar didn't respond because he knew she was right. Then came the moment that changed everything. A low alarm echoed through the halls, the kind of sound that hadn't rung since the last galactic invasion. It wasn't the alien ship system, it was human. And it meant only one thing: engagement. Protocol activated. Veltar rushed to the bridge as Ren's voice came through every speaker. "All personnel remain in position," he said, calm as ever. "The enemy has entered our engagement range. They will not escape." Through the viewing screen, flashes of red appeared in the distance, not from the Leviathan, but from the drones. Each one now armed, lighting up space with coordinated patterns. They weren't waiting to be attacked, they were striking first. Disabling engines, scrambling shields, jamming communication. The enemy hadn't even fired a shot, yet they were already losing. Veltar could hardly breathe. He turned to Ren, who now stood in front of the main console. watching the battle unfold like a chess match. This is more than defense, Veltar said, voice shaking. Ren looked at him and finally spoke a sentence that chilled the entire crew. We came to help, he said, but help always ends with warning. Veltar didn't understand that. First, then Ren raised his hand and snapped his fingers once. Every drone switched modes. What were once harmless flying machines now transformed, tiny wings folded inward, weapons extended, scanners turned red, and in perfect silence, they erased the enemy fleet in 12 seconds. 12 seconds, no glory, no fireworks, no chase. Just silence and then nothing. Veltar stood in stunned silence. What had taken his species generations of war to accomplish, the humans had done with one wave of a hand. They weren't just Deathworlders. They were galactic architects of order. And they had no tolerance for chaos. Ren turned back to his crew and said simply, begin disengagement. We've done what we came for. But as he walked past Veltar again, he stopped and added one final warning. Next time, Commander, he said softly, be sure your call for help goes to the right people. Because Earth doesn't ask questions, we just respond. And in that moment, Veltar finally understood. The humans hadn't just cured a virus, they had changed the future, and the galaxy would never forget it. The wreckage of the enemy fleet floated like ashes in space. No black box would send a warning. No survivor would tell the tale. It was as if they never existed at all. Only silence remained, cold and infinite. But from that silence came fear. Because every nearby system had seen the flash. Every listening station recorded the moment those 3 enemy ships blinked off the stars like they had been swallowed by a black hole. And somewhere far away, in the heart of a neutral zone, a nervous diplomat whispered. The humans moved. On board the alien ship, Commander Veltar still hadn't spoken. His bridge officers looked to him, eyes wide, hands trembling. They were cured, safe and alive, but shaken in a way no virus could ever cause. They had witnessed something ancient, something terrible, the controlled fury of Earth, and they knew the galaxy had changed tonight. Commander Ren stood alone in the Leviathan's war chamber, a massive room filled with holograms, ship logs, and real-time surveillance from 5 neighboring sectors. He tapped into a frequency that only high commanders could use, encrypted, silent, clean. One command went out, just 2 words. Message sent, within an hour. Over 30 known governments received a private file. It showed what happened, uncut, unedited, raw. No commentary, no threats, just footage. Footage of Earth's drones disabling warships in under 12 seconds. Footage of humans walking through biotoxins like fog. Footage of an unmarked ship deploying precision justice without ever asking permission. Some laughed nervously, some called it fake. But others, the wise ones, began issuing new orders. Do not engage human vessels. Do not respond to Earth's silence with arrogance. Do not mistake old records for truth. The humans are not as outdated as we hoped. Meanwhile, back on the moon, Veltar stood beside Ren as the Leviathan system slowly retracted. The drones returned, the med units disassembled. The mobile hospitals folded into cubes and vanished into crates. Everything had been cleaned, restored, stabilized, as if the humans had never been there at all, except they had, and nothing would ever be the same. Veltar finally found his voice. Why did you send the footage to everyone? Ren didn't look at him, just stared out the viewport into space. Because they needed to remember, he said. Remember what? Veltar asked. That Earth doesn't raise its voice, Ren replied. We just act, and sometimes once is enough. In a far system, a group of warlords gathered in a hidden chamber. They had been planning to attack weakened colonies just like Veltar's. They watched the footage in silence. One of them, a massive reptilian general, threw his glass against the wall and shouted, "Who let the Deathworlders wake up?" But it was already too late. The galaxy now knew the humans didn't talk much anymore. They didn't hold summits, didn't issue ultimatums. They moved in shadows, appeared from the void, and when they did, problems vanished. And that made them more dangerous than any empire, because humans didn't fight for land or glory. They fought for balance, and that kind of war didn't end with treaties. It ended with silence. Back on the moon, the Leviathan's engines hummed. Veltar followed Ren through the docking corridor, unable to stop thinking about what had happened. "You didn't have to help us," he said finally. Ren paused and gave a small nod. "We didn't," he agreed. "Then why?" Veltar asked. Ren looked at him and said something simple, something that would echo across worlds. "Because someone has to be the wall," he said. "And we've already been through enough to know when to build one." Then he walked into the ship, his crew following silently behind. No medals, no thanks, no celebration. Just quiet retreat like ghosts returning to the dark. And as the Leviathan disappeared into hyperspace, a single drone remained behind. It floated above the moon like a watchful eye, blinking once every few seconds, not transmitting data, just a presence. A reminder that the humans had come, and they were watching still. Across the stars, leaders whispered. The humans moved, and the galaxy blinked. Some would fear them, some would hate them, but no one would ever ignore them again, because the message was clear. Earth didn't need to roar. It only needed to whisper, and the universe listened, long after the Leviathan vanished into hyperspace. The silence it left behind still echoed through the alien halls. Commander Veltar sat alone in the observation chamber, staring out into the stars that no longer felt familiar. His people were safe, the virus gone, the enemy fleet destroyed, and yet he felt more shaken than ever before. Because he had seen something no textbook, no strategy guide, no interstellar treaty had ever explained. He had seen the truth about humans. They weren't just from a death world. They were forged by it, molded in its cruelty, hardened by its storms. And they carried that legacy with them like armor made of instinct, not metal. Veltar remembered what Ren had said just before leaving. "We don't fight for allies, we fight to stop patterns." At first, Veltar hadn't understood what that meant. Now he did. Humans didn't build fleets just to conquer. They didn't help just for praise. They watched, waited, and when they acted, they ended things. Not with speeches, not with warnings, but with silent precision, like surgeons cutting away the disease of chaos itself. The stories had always said humans were wild, emotional, reckless. But those stories had been written by beings who had never stood before one of Earth's commanders, never looked into those cold, calculating eyes that missed nothing, never heard the quiet way they said, "This is mercy," before unleashing destruction. Veltar walked the halls of his ship, seeing it differently now. The humans had fixed everything, but they had also scanned everything. Not a wall, wire, or whisper had been left unnoticed. The Leviathan had left behind medkits, portable shields, encrypted field data, and a silent drone that still hovered over the moon. It didn't speak, didn't blink, but its presence was a warning. We were here, and we remember. Veltar turned to his science officer, a young alien still shaking from what she'd seen. "Do you still think humans are just another species?" he asked softly. She shook her head. "They're not just people," she whispered. "They're a force in another part of the galaxy." On a diplomatic station orbiting a trade moon, alien ambassadors met in a closed session. The footage of the Leviathan's engagement had already leaked. They had seen the drones move in perfect formation, the shields absorb plasma fire, the enemy ships fall without resistance, and yet no human had claimed victory, no speech had followed, just the footage and the knowledge that Earth had moved. And that was enough. An elder ambassador from the Krek Syndicate spoke with trembling claws. The humans responded to a signal that wasn't even meant for them. They came anyway. They cured disease, destroyed enemies, and left without asking for anything. A voice from the shadows replied. "That's what scares me the most. If they did that without permission, imagine what they'd do with it." Back on the moon, Veltar stared up at the blinking drone still watching from orbit. He wondered what kind of planet could produce beings like Ren. What kind of world could burn so hard that the survivors became fire themselves? And then he remembered the old name given to Earth by the galaxy, the Deathworld. A place of earthquakes, storms, beasts, and extremes. A world that tried to kill its children every day, and the ones who survived became Deathworlders, not just warriors, not just soldiers, but beings who understood that survival meant ending threats fast, not discussing them. Veltar now realized the difference. His people waited for permission, for signs, for orders. The humans needed only one thing, a reason, and once they had it, they moved like a machine powered by instinct and memory. He turned to his communications officer. "Send a message to the Galactic Council," he said. The officer blinked, confused. What should it say? Veltar looked up at the stars and answered, "Tell them Earth answered a call, and the galaxy is lucky they chose to save, not erase. Because that's the truth about Deathworlders. They don't come to dominate, they come to restore balance. No matter what must be burned in the process, and when they leave, they don't take victory with them, they leave behind a lesson. One that stays long after the smoke has cleared. One that every species will whisper from now on, if Earth moves, be ready." The stars above the moon were the same as before, but to those who had lived through what happened, nothing looked familiar anymore. The ship had been saved, the virus cured, the enemy destroyed, and yet something deeper had shifted. Something. Across the whole galaxy, it had started with one mistake, a single misrouted signal, an accidental call for help, and the response that followed had shaken the foundations of every major power. Veltar stood once again on the bridge of his ship, now fully repaired. He looked at the blinking console that once transmitted a simple distress code. He remembered how desperate he had been, how hopeless. He never meant to reach Earth, never intended to call the Deathworlders, but that one signal had changed everything. From the outer colonies to the capital sectors, everyone was talking about the incident. No government claimed involvement, no enemy took responsibility for the virus, no alliance offered aid afterward. But the humans, they didn't wait for politics. They saw a dying ship and came with warships, medkits, drones, and fire, and they didn't ask why. They simply said, "We heard you." In the Galactic Senate, silence filled the chamber as the final recordings played. Footage of Commander Wren standing in silence while his drones dismantled an entire invading fleet. Audio of his quiet command, "Begin engagement," end it cleanly. No one had ever seen such precision from a species once considered primitive and emotional. No one expected Earth to rise again, not like this, not without warning, but now. The truth was clear. They never stopped rising. They had simply been watching, waiting, learning from the shadows of old wars. Ambassadors returned home with a new directive. Avoid provocation, respect silence, and never mistake Earth's stillness for weakness. Meanwhile, the Leviathan remained untraceable. Some said it had gone back into hiding. Some believed it was already in another system, helping someone else. Others feared it was simply waiting just beyond sensor range, always listening, because the humans never said goodbye. They didn't need to. Their message was already delivered clearer than any speech. Back on Veltar's ship, a ceremony was held not to honor the humans, but to honor the moment the galaxy changed course. The crew stood in silence, each of them carrying a new truth in their hearts. They were alive because Earth had answered, but they were different because Earth had taught them something. Strength wasn't loud. It wasn't about numbers or titles or diplomacy. True strength was the power to act when others hesitate, to protect without asking for thanks, to destroy with precision and leave without applause. Veltar addressed his crew, his voice steady now. "We sent a signal," he said, "by accident, and what came to us was not a fleet, but a warning." He paused, looking around at the faces that had aged in days. "We lived because humans remembered something the rest of the galaxy forgot, that some wars are ended not by might but by intention." He raised a hand, and the drone still hovering in orbit blinked once. It was still there, days later, watching silently, not moving, not threatening, just reminding. That single blinking light became a symbol across nearby worlds. Merchants spoke. Other pirates avoided it. Soldiers whispered when they saw it. They called it the Eye of Earth, and no one dared to interfere with anything beneath it. Veltar sent a final message from his ship. It was short, encrypted, and only one system received it. The message said, "Your silence was louder than our screams, and we will not forget it." Whether the humans would ever reply, no one knew, but they didn't need to, because their message wasn't words, it was presence. And now every empire, every fleet, every ruler understood a new universal rule. If you send a call into the void, you better be ready for who might answer. And if that answer is Earth, then you must also be ready for truth, for order, for judgment wrapped in steel and silence, because the Deathworlders do not come for thanks. They come when the galaxy forgets what real strength looks like, and when they arrive, they don't just help. They change everything.